Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We have discussed about the preliminaries of PDE and some classification of PDEs in the last class. So we'll recap that once again, and then we will. I will explain about the boundary conditions. Okay, because those are all boundary and initial conditions. Those are all important things, and then we will solve simple problems in this today's class. Okay. So again, the classification of PDE is a recap. Okay. So we have discussed about this PD formal definition, like f is a function from omega cross rp to r power np cross r power np cross r power n square p, etc., r power n power p to r power q. Okay, so which is like this f of x comma u comma du d square u d cube u, etc., etc. Okay, so this is the formal definition of the PDE, and if it is a this is the system since here q is there, it can be a system of PDE. But if I'm just keeping like p and only instead of p, I'm just keeping only that u as a only variable. Okay, means it is u is a function from r power n to r. Sorry. Yeah. So in that case, we are having the formal definition again, okay, which we have already seen earlier. Then we have defined like system of PDEs. Suppose this equation consists of only more than one equation, then it is called system of PDE. If it is only one equation, then it is called as simply PDE, okay, so, or scalar PDE. And the mth order, so the highest power, the highest order derivative appearing in this PDE is called the mth order PDE. That also we have seen. And then we classify it as linear and non-linear. So if you can write this du equal to f of x, instead of that, if I can write as lu equal to f, and this L is linear, then we call it as this operator L is linear, then we call it as that PDE as a linear. Otherwise, we call it as a non-linear PDE. Okay, and then non-linear PDE also we classify as quasi-linear, semi-linear, etc. So if the operator L is linear, that means I can write that equation as follows, like summation a alpha x d alpha u, means all the coefficients of d alpha u should be a function of x alone. Okay, all the coefficients should be a function of x. It means x, y, z, etc. Okay, x in the sense that it is x belongs to omega. So if it is not linear, then we say it is a non-linear PDE that we have seen.
Sir, one question.
Yeah, please.
Sir, here we are saying that alpha a should be a function of x. Is this why we are saying because of the right hand side the function of x? If the right hand side is a function of something else, then
right hand side can be it is function of x only. I am keeping right. L is equal to f of x only. Right hand side is always function of x only. I'm just splitting them. Whatever is having on the u should be on the left hand side, and whatever is not in u should be on the right hand side. So I'm checking the coefficients of d alpha u only. So the d alpha u coefficients would be a function of x alone. Okay, so in that case, we say it as a linear PDE. Otherwise, we say it is a non-linear PDE. Is it clear?
yes.
Okay. So then we classify quasi-linear. So if it is not linear, then again we classify them as quasi-linear and fully non-linear. So in this case, what I'm trying to do is that the largest coefficient, okay, means the highest derivative of order m. So only that coefficient I'm just looking. If those coefficient is function of x, u, du, dm minus u, and etc. up to the m minus 1. Okay, so then we say that it is a quasi-linear PDE. Otherwise, we say it is a fully non-linear PDE. Means the independent variables and derivatives of the unknown function should be there. It should not be a function of the mth order derivative. It can be a function of the previous derivative. Then we say that it is the other things. And remaining things can be again like the remaining coefficients. I don't worry about that. Okay, so that can be again it is going to be a function of x, u, etc. is going to be. So next one, semi-linear PDE. So in this case, I'm just taking the same kind of thing. Okay, so in semi-linear PDE, I'm just saying a alpha x. So here the difference is that the a alpha can be function of x u du dm minus 1u. Means the previous derivatives can be there. Whereas in semi-linear PDE, it should be a function of x alone. Whereas the remaining things can be function of u and ui. Means the highest order derivative, which I'm checking, whose coefficient should be a function of x alone. So then in that case, we say semi-linear PDE. So this also we got seen. And almost linear PDE, in that case, I just say like a alpha x, d alpha u. So the right hand side I have, right, the f of x. So this f of x I can put like u. Okay, this I can combine that. So in that case I say almost linear. Okay, all the coefficients on the d alpha u means the d coefficients, the derivative coefficients would be function of x alone, whereas the u can be containing non-linear terms can be there. In that case, it is called almost linear. So for example, you can see that u square here, the ut plus ux plus u square. So u square is there, but still we say it is almost linear because the u square is a non-linear term, but the ut ux terms are linear, so we don't worry about that. So next one, homogeneous and non-inhomogeneous. So in that case, we are saying like du is equal to fx. Okay, so the fx is identically 0. Then we say it is a homogeneous PDE. Otherwise, we say it as a inhomogeneous PDE. Okay. So this one we have seen that example, and many of you have submitted that answers also. That is good. Okay. One or two mistakes was there that I will discuss. Okay, what is the mistake? So first order PDE is in two variables. So let me just we are going to discuss about only one or two variables most of the time, and anyhow we'll just explain that with some general settings also for some cases. But now let us see like the examples which I have given. Let us see like what all the things are going to be there. Okay, so these examples let us see. So if I go now, I'm just going to stick to two PDE in two variables and three variables in this next 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Okay, and then we'll discuss that, and then I will explain that problem where you committed a mistake also. So if it is a 2D variable, then what you are going to have is that you are going to have f of x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy is going to be there equal to 0. If it is a function of two variables, this is going to be there. Okay, so that means if it is a linear, what it is supposed to be having is that the form is going to be of this form: ax comma y ux plus ax comma y u y bx comma y uy, okay, plus c of equal to I'm going to put, or you can put plus also. Okay, so it is up to you, like that is not a problem. C of x comma y into u equal to f of x comma y, I can put it. Either you put the c on the other side or this side, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's not going to affect that. So here you can see that this a b c are functions of x only, x comma y only. Okay, function of x means here x and y, because two variables are there, right? So a of x comma y, b of x comma y, and c of x comma y is there. So this is called linear. So in this case, it is called linear. Okay, so semi-linear means what it is going to have, it is going to be of this form: a of x comma y ux plus b of x comma y uy plus c of x comma y comma u equal to 0. Okay, or you can put it on the other side, it doesn't matter. Okay, because this is just a function, right? Either you put it this side or that side doesn't matter. So here you remember that I'm just combining these two together. Okay, in this case I'm just combining these two together, so it can be a function of u, and both the things can be there. So automatically linear PDE is going to become a semi-linear PDE, because I can rewrite this equation in this form, because if I just combine these two together, and then I can write it as c of x comma y comma u, so that means it is a linear PDE automatically becomes like a semi-linear PDE. Okay, so a of x comma y ux, b of x comma y uy, c of x comma y comma u. Here c of x comma y is there, here c of x comma y comma u is there. That means there may be some non-linear term also can come, because I'm not saying it should be linear or anything. It can be anything. Okay, only these two coefficients I'm just checking whether it is linear or not. So means I'm just checking whether it is a function of x and y alone. Okay, so that is called semi-linear PDE. Now for quasi-linear PDE, this is called semi-linear PDE. Okay, semi-linear. Now quasi-linear, so in this case it is going to become like a of x comma y comma u ux plus b of x comma y comma u uy plus c of x comma y comma u equal to 0. It can depend on up to the previous derivative. Okay, so whatever the highest derivative is there, its coefficient can have x du d square u etc. up to the previous derivative it can come. So this is the first order derivative. Okay, first order PDE, that means 0th order can come. 0th order means the u function can come. So that is the reason a of x comma y comma u, b of x comma y comma u, c of x comma y comma u should be there. Okay, so that is called quasi-linear PDE. Okay, this is called quasi-linear.
That's right. One question.
Yeah.
So in the quadrilinear, the coefficient can be function of u that you
Yeah.
you said.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. So now let us go to the second order PDE. Okay, so in second order PDE, what is it going to come? So let us see that. So in this case, it is going to become like f of x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy comma uxx comma uxy comma. Of course, I can put uy comma x, but I'm just assuming that this function is the ux comma y and uy comma x. I'm just assuming it is equal with the condition that the continuous derivatives are there. Okay, so this is the one I'm going to write. Okay, so I'm just ignoring that uy comma x. Of course, you can put the uy comma x also. It doesn't matter. We are going to stick to this one because the entire lecture mostly we are going to assume that we use continuously differential is going to be there. Okay, so that part you are going to assume. So in this case, linear PDE is going to be of this form: a of x comma. So this is linear. Okay, a of x comma y comma uxx plus b of so here more questions are going to come, so I'm just going to note a1 a2. So a1 x comma y comma uxx, a2 x comma y comma uxy. Okay, and then a3 x comma y comma uyy plus a4. So a4 x comma y comma ux plus a5 x comma y comma, that a5 is also a function of x comma y. Okay, so that I forgot to put. So plus a6 x comma y comma u equal to f of x comma y. This is called linear PDE in second order. Okay, second order PDE is in two variables. Linear PDE is of this form. Okay, whatever you take it, if you can rewrite the equation in this format, then it is called linear PDE. Then semilinear. Okay, semilinear. So in semilinear, what I need to do is that I'm just going to put this way. So a1 of x comma y comma uxx plus a2 of x comma y comma uxy plus a3 of x comma y comma uyy equal to, on the other side I can simply put f of x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy. Means all the derivatives, so the other things, okay, except this highest order derivative, remaining things can be non-linear. That's what I mean here. Okay, x comma y comma u comma ux comma ui means it can have a non-linear combinations can be there. That is the reason it's called semilinear. Only the highest order derivative I got to check. Now for the quasi-linear, what I got to write? I got to write a1 of x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy can be there because the highest derivative is uxx, so it can be up to the previous derivatives, it can be there. So uxx plus a2 of same thing x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy, okay, plus a3 of here ux comma uxy plus a3 of, okay, x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy uyy equal to same thing f of x comma y comma, same thing f of x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy. Okay, so this is called quasi-linear PDE. This is called quasi-linear. So these are all the usual way to, these are all the things you can just check whether it's a quasi-linear PDE or semi-linear PDE or not linear PDE. So mostly these three classifications will be dealing in many of the cases. Okay, so quasi-linear PDE, semi-linear PDE, and linear PDE is only will be discussing most of the time. So that's the reason I'm just highlighting this once again. Okay, so this one. So there are, if you read one textbook, there will be a different classification. Another textbook, there will be some other classification they will be doing. So few authors, what they do is that they classify only the linear PDE. So if it is a linear PDE only, they will check whether it is a homogeneous equation or non-homogeneous equation. Okay, some authors classify like that. Like if this term is 0, then only this equation they used to check. Other equation they don't check it. Okay, only for this equation they will check whether it's a homogeneous or non-homogeneous PDE. Otherwise they will just leave it. Okay, so that is some authors used to do. And some authors classify only non-linear PDE as semi-linear, non-semi-linear. Means, see, as per the definition, you can see that linear PDE automatically becomes semi-linear PDE, right? Whatever I got defined here. But some authors used to say that If it is a non-linear PDE, then only classify as a semi-linear or non-semi-linear PDE. Okay, so that is also there. Similarly, if it is a non-semi-linear, okay, if it is not there, then only they classify as the quasi-linear, non-quasi-linear. So by default, this will come. Okay, as per this definition, by default, linear implies semi-linear, semi-linear implies quasi-linear. But some authors classify that, like if it is not linear, then only they classify as semi-linear or non-semi-linear, and if it is not semi-linear, then only they classify as a quasi-linear and non-quasi-linear. And then if it is non-quasi-linear, then they classify fully non-linear. So it depends on the authors, that may vary, but it is not a problem. Okay, because they want to study only this class is already studied. Then why do we need to mix up this one again with the mix up this one? So that, for that reason, they just ignore this class and then study only this class, which is not belonging to this one. Okay, means completely the complement class only. The complement of this linear PDE they take it, and then they classify whether it is semi-linear or non-semi-linear. Again, for quasi-linear, because they already studied the semi-linear, they used to classify. So it depends on the authors, it will change. But by default, it will be coming. Okay, so that is if you depending on the author's classification, they used to do that. So in the later part, we'll see like this classification, this linear PDE. Okay, so this PDE, we will check whether it's a this second order PDE. We'll check it whether it's a hyperbolic or parabolic and elliptic also. So that will be that can be extended for higher order PDEs also. You can just extend that for the higher order PDEs also. That will see that. So you can easily prove that linear PDE is subset of semi-linear PDE, and semi-linear PDE is a subset of quasi-linear PDE, and quasi-linear PDE is subset of PDE. So this you can easily prove it. Okay, so I just leave it to as an exercise. So this one already many of you have solved. So one or two mistake was there. See, the mistake which some people made was the second example. They have made mistake like 1 minus u square is there, so they classified as non-homogeneous. Some people has classified as homogeneous. It's it's non-homogeneous because 1 is there. Okay, so even if you put the minus u square on the left hand side, right hand side 1 is there. Okay, right hand side 1 is there, so it is a non-homogeneous PDE. And most of the people have committed mistake is the fourth example. In fourth example, you have committed a mistake. See, this what is e power sin x? What is e power sin x? What is the expansion for e power sin x? Anyone? What is e power x? What is e power x? Taylor series expansion.
X plus x square by 2 factorial.
1 plus x square by 2 factorial, etc. Right? So same way, like whatever function you are giving, so this e power ux tt, it is going to become like 1 plus ux tt plus ux tt whole square, etc. is going to come. Therefore, that 1 is there, right? That I can put it on the right hand side. So that is going to become like a homogeneous part. Sorry, non-homogeneous part. So many people, since the right hand side is 0, many people have kept it as the 0 part, but that is not the case. So you have to check it in this way. So it can become like a non-homogeneous part also. Okay. Okay. So now let us come to today's thing. Like we are going to discuss about the boundary conditions and some more operators called gradient, divergence, and then how to solve the problem. Simple problems we'll see, and then we'll discuss about the method of characteristics. Probably I cannot cover the method of characteristics today. I will just take it in the next class. Okay. So let me see. Okay. So let us see the vector differential operators first. Okay. So what is the vector differential operator? So let us mostly here onwards we'll be sticking many times to the 2-dimensional variable or 3-dimensional variable. So let me take a function f of x comma y. F of x comma y be a function defined on the domain. Okay, omega subset of r square. Okay, it's x comma y belongs to r square. Now fix a point x naught comma y naught belongs to omega. I hope you have studied this in the multivariable calculus, but I'm just recalling it. So we say the directional derivative of f of x comma y. Okay, we are going to define a directional derivative of f of x comma y. In the direction, I'm going to define a direction. Okay, a unit vector I'm going to define. So that is nothing but v is equal to ai plus bj. Okay, remember that it's a unit vector only I'm defining. Okay, it's a unit vector at x comma y naught. Okay, so the directional derivative of f of x comma y in the direction of unit vector v equal to ai plus bj. Okay, at x naught comma y naught. Okay, this point I'm going to define as follows. Okay, how am I going to define? So this I just denote as dv of f at x naught comma y naught. Okay, so it's a directional derivative with respect to the unit vector v for the function f at the point x naught comma y naught. Okay, so how am I going to define? I'm just going to define as dou f by dou s. Okay, dou f by sorry, df by ds. Actually it will become like df by ds, not even dou f, df by ds. Okay, so I can write it as at v, okay, at v at x naught comma y naught. So how am I going to define that? So this is nothing but what I'm going to define is that this I'm going to define it in a, so I take a vector, okay, from x naught comma y naught. I'm just going to approach this in different directions. I can approach that. So I can take different paths to approach this x naught comma y naught. Okay, so I have a point x naught comma y naught here. So I can approach in different path. Okay, I can approach it in different path. So some different direction vectors I can take it. So how am I going to define that one? Is that again this is a df by ds I'm going to define. Okay, so how it is going to be defined? See, in the case of dou f by dou x, in case of dou f by dou x at y equal to b or x equal to a, I define like so. For example, if I define like dou f by dou x comma b, so in this case y is fixed. Only xi will be varying. So this is becoming like df by dou f by dou x means, so at a comma b, if I am defining, this is going to become like df by dx at x equal to a. Okay, so this will become like x comma b, d of x comma b at x equal to a I will be defining, and then I will be defining like f of x plus kach, okay, comma b minus f of x f of a plus kach comma b, f of a comma b divided by kach I used to define. This is dou f by dou x definition I used to do. Now here I'm keeping b as fixed. Okay, I'm not changing the b at all here. I'm just keeping b as fixed. Similarly, I used to define by dou f by dou y, where I will change the keep a as fixed and change the y. Here, what I'm going to do is that, so in that case, I will be approaching through only one coefficient is fixed. That means I'm just going to approach through only one thing. Here I'm going to vary both the things simultaneously. Remember that here I'm going to vary both the things simultaneously. So in that case, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to define like this: limit kach tends to 0. Okay, f of x naught comma kach a comma y naught plus kach b minus f of x naught comma y naught divided by h. Remember the difference. In the case of dou f by dou x, you keep, okay, you keep one of the things, okay, x naught comma h only will put, you even the lot a will be there, y naught plus b will be there, then you will be putting this one. Okay, so here one variable will be fixed. Whereas in the case of directional derivative, not only the x naught plus kach, you are going in the direction of a. Okay, you have to go in the direction of a, so that means you are changing kach into a. Okay, in the direction of a only you are multiplying. Okay, means that, therefore it will reach exactly from that path. Okay, so the a naught with respect to that vector you are going to do. So that is the reason you are going to get this one: f of x naught plus kach a, y naught plus kach b minus f of x naught plus y naught by kach is going to come. Okay, so here I am denoting dv. dv denotes the directional derivative in the direction of v. Okay, v is nothing but this a plus bj, the unit vector b. Okay, so that is the reason I'm just doing. So the same thing you might have studied in the Rudin book. If you have studied that in the unit of in the second semester, you might have studied the multivariable calculus. So he used to define like this. So v equal to, so general settings he used to define vi into ej. Okay, so v is any n-dimensional vector, you can take it. Therefore, you can take the standard basis, then their components will be there. So vi into ej is going to be there. Okay, so this you can write it, any vector you can write it in this form. Okay, due to that n-dimensional vector which has the linear independence, etc., the basis is there. So e1, e2, e3 are basis. So in that case, Rudin used to define like this. So dv of f of x, almost same, both are same. Okay, so he used to define like this: summation I equal to 1 to n. Okay, I equal to 1 to n dou by dou xi of f of x into vi. Okay, f of x into vi. So this is what he used to define that. This is the general settings. Okay, both are equivalent only. Now we are going to use this one, this Rudin definition. and then going to define that. So how do we define that? So this is the directional derivative. Now what we are going to use this one. Okay, in the entire lecture we'll be using this one. So gradient. Next definition is gradient. So gradient is something like you can just define like this. The vector, it's a vector. Gradient is a vector. The vector operator. Sorry. The vector operator del I'm going to define. Okay, how am I going to define? So I'm just going to take dou by dou x of summation I equal to 1 to n dou by dou x I into e I I'm going to define. Okay, so dou by dou xi of ei. For example, if I have two-dimensional variable x comma y is my two-dimensional variable, that what is del is nothing but this this one. Okay, del is nothing but it is going to become like dou by dou x plus into I dou by dou y into j. If it is a three-dimensional, this is going to become like del is equivalent to dou by dou x I plus dou by dou y j plus dou by dou x dou z k. Okay, so same way I can put like e1, e2, e3. So this is usually if you see that physics books or some of the engineering books, this is the one they used to use. But in general, what you can write is that you can write as dou by dou x1 e1 plus dou by dou x2. So if it is a n-dimensional variable, dou by dou x2 e2 plus dou by dou x dou z, sorry, dou x3 e3, etc., etc. I can write it. That's what I am writing here. So this is called gradient. Okay, this is called gradient. Now, if I'm just defining gradient of a function, okay, gradient of a function means what I'm going to do is that I'm going to define del f. That means this dou by dou x is going to act on the f. So that means if I put del f here, this is going to become like dou f by dou xi, dou f by dou yj is going to come. This is going to become like dou f by dou y, and then this is going to become like dou f by dou f by dou f by same way here, dou f dou f dou f. So same way if I define dou f here, this is going to become like dou f. That's all. This is called del f, gradient of a function. Okay, where f is a function of x1, x2, xn. So in this case, it is a function of x comma y. In this case, it is a function of x comma y comma z. Okay, any questions on this one?
Sir?
Yeah.
What is the representation of the gradients? Means what meaning, sir?
Okay, the gradient is going to talk about how. See, you know the derivative, right? What is the derivative?
Yes, sir. Rate of change.
Derivative change, right? This is also going to talk about the change only, but the change with respect to all dimensions it is going to talk about. Okay, the del f is going to talk about the gradient with respect to all dimensions. For example, so the best example we can give is that you take a some pan is used to be there, right? Like some curved pan used to be there in your home, right? Where they will be making some puris and other things. So in that case, you can take a surface like this. Okay, so this surface like this, you can take it. So you can just see that how that change is going to happen. Okay, like how the change is going to happen in this direction. For example, I want to see like what is the direction, what is the slope in this surface completely it is going to take it. Okay, this is a 3D example. Same way you can extend it for the n-dimensional case also. So you have a hyperplane. So in that hyperplane, the hypersurface will be there. How the surface is going to change in that directions. Suppose you take some direction. In that case, it is going to be there. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So how steep it is going to be there, etc. You can check it. Any questions? Okay. So we have defined the
So along this direction, so there will be maximum rate of change of the function along the direction of
that is that is the application of that gradient. So in the gradient, what we'll see is that suppose I want to find what is the see, we used to use that derivatives for finding that maxima, minima, local points, etc. Right? So the same way, in the gradient, you can just find a point where del f equal to 0 you used to find. Okay, and then you can find it where that maximum is going to obtain from this one. So for this, the Gaussian matrix, etc. will be coming to the picture. That is the application of that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the gradient, so the dv, the directional derivative we have, right? dv of f of x naught comma y naught. So the definition was as follows. Okay, the directional derivative definition was as follows. So what was the definition as per the routine definition? So if I put this one, this is going to become like summation summation I equal to 1 to n dou by dou by dou xi, okay, into f of x into VA. Okay, this is the directional derivative definition. Now, what is the gradient definition? Gradient definition is that del equal to summation I equal to 1 to n, okay, dou by dou xi into EI is that. Now, this one, okay, what is the relation between these two? I can write it as, okay, so this one I can write it as dv of f, I can write it as, okay, dv of f is nothing but summation I equal to 1 to n dou f by dou xi into EI, okay, dot, I can take it as a dot product with v vector, I can take it. That means you can write it as VI EJ, I can write it. VI EJ EI, I can write it. Okay, summation VI EI, I can write it. So in that case, what is it going to come? So EI, so this is a dot product. So EI will be just 1 if it is because it is a basis. E1, E2, E3 are basis. So what is going to come? So when E1 is same, then it is going to be there. Otherwise, it is going to vanish. Okay. So therefore, this is going to become like summation I equal to 1 to n dou f by dou xi into VA is going to come. So that is same thing. So therefore, what is this one? This is nothing but del f dot V, I can write it. Okay, that's what I'm writing it here. dv of fx can be written as del f dot v, you can write it in general. Okay. So if v equal to ai plus bj, then in that case dvf can be written this way. So that again I'm just giving it as a simple example. So this can be written as, so dvf can be written as fxi plus fyj dot ai plus bj. Okay, so that means it is going to become like fxa plus fyb. Okay, so this is another important observation. Suppose dvf equal to 0. Okay, dvf equal to 0. Suppose dvf equal to 0. You know that suppose df by dx equal to 0. What does that f is going to be there? Which implies f equal to constant, right? In the ODE case, you might have studied. If df by dx equal to 0, f equal to constant is going to come. Now, dvf equal to 0 means what is it going to come is that it is going to be constant in the direction of the vector v only. Okay, it is not guaranteeing that it is constant across the base. It is going to guarantee that dvf equal to 0 means it is constant in the direction of the vector v. Only in the direction of vector v only it is going to be constant. Okay, so dvf equal to, it is constant, f is constant. F is constant, so this is implying f is constant. Okay, f is constant in the direction of v, the vector v. Okay, in that direction of vector v only it is going to be there. So the gradient of a function at a point is so this one I have already explained. Okay, the gradient of a function at a point is a vector that points in the direction which the function increases most rapidly. That already Kritik has mentioned, right? So this is the place where that increasing is going to happen more rapidly. That's what I mentioned, that like you can take a bowl and then you can see like how fast it is going to be there. Like you can just put a bead and then you can see like where it is going to reach that bowl. It will be always reaching the center of the bowl, etc. Okay, so next one, this operator I'm going to keep it as it is. Okay, now I'm going to define something called divergence. So I have defined a gradient now. Now what I'm going to define is the gradient of a function I have defined. Now what I'm going to do is that, so it is a vector, right? So what is the combinations I can take is that since there is an operator, I can just operate with that. Now since it is a vector, what I can do is that I can operate something on the I have 3 components. Okay, one is del, another is f, another is v. V is nothing but summation vi ej I have, or vi ei I have. Okay, so I have 3 things are there. So first I operated on f, so that means I'm operating at this one, and then I'm going to do. Now what I'm going to do is that this is a vector, this is a vector. Can you take del dot v? Okay, that is next question. Because it is a vector, therefore I can take a dot product, right? So if I take the dot product, what can I get? Because I'm just having some two vectors are there. So can I operate that and then get some result? So that is possible, and that is called divergence. Okay, so del dot v, since this is EA and this is EY, so what I'm going to get is that this is going to become like summation I equal to 1 to n dou vi by dou xi is going to come. It's a dot product. Okay, means what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to operate on each one. Okay, I'm going to operate dou by dou xi on b1. I'm going to operate dou by dou x2. I'm going to operate on b2, etc., etc. I'm going to do. So that is going to give you the answer as dou bi by dou xi. So that is called the gradient. Sorry, divergence. The divergence of the vector field. It is going to give you the flux. Okay, flux per unit time means flux means like suppose I will just explain that later. I will explain that what is the flux in the transport equation. So what is it going to come is that, so suppose you have a particle here, so how much you are going to have the flow, it is going to come into that smaller amount of rectangle, that we will see that. So we'll see that in the transport equation more detail. So this is called flux per unit time. Okay, the divergence of a vector field is called the flux per unit time. So I'll just explain with some animation, graphics, etc. in the 8th lecture, I think. Okay, with the about the flux and other things. So it is the dot product between the gradient operator and the vector field. Okay, this is the gradient operator and this is the vector field. I'm just taking a dot product, that is called the divergence. So in 3D, you can just simply define like this. Del dot B is going to become like dou V1 by dou X, dou V2 by plus dou V2 by dou Y plus dou V3 by dou Z. This is called the divergence. Any questions in this? Okay, so these are all the fundamental blocks for you to solve the later problems. Okay, so for that purpose, I'm just explaining these things. So we'll be talking about, so when I say like del, you have to imagine that this is the operator. When I say del dot B, you have to imagine that this is the operator, etc. Okay, so because in the later stage, I will not use this dou by dou X, etc. Simply I'll put del F or nabla, etc. Okay, so this is gradient. Okay, this gradient I will put, the gradient operator I will put it, I'll this one. So actually this is called this operator is called nabla. Okay, this is called nabla. Gradient, this is called nabla. If I set any times the del, just remember that this is nabla, because I used to confuse the reversed triangle and this is delta. Okay, this is delta. This is called nabla actually. So if you type it in the LaTeX, you go to type /nabla, then it will come. Okay. So next one. So I have already taken. So I have taken some combinations. So del was there. Del was defined. Then F is there. V is there. I have defined del F. I have defined del dot V. Okay. Now the question is that del F. What is del F actually? This is a vector. Okay. This is a function and it is a scalar, because F is a function from r power n to n. This is a vector. Okay. What is del F? Del F is a vector. Correct? Because I'm operating on F, so this is going to become like a vector. What is del dot V? This is going to be a scalar. The output is going to be a scalar, because del dot V, this is a sum only. This is a function. This is a function. This is a function. So this is a sum. So it is going to be a single number. So that means it is a scalar. It's a real number. So it's a scalar. Now the question is that since del F is a vector, okay, del F itself is a vector, I'm just checking whether we can operate del dot del F, whether I can find this one. Okay, since it is a vector, okay, I'm just trying to find del dot del F. So that is going to become like del dot del F is going to become like, in this case, it is going to become like summation I equal to 1 to n dou square F by dou xi square is going to come. So you operate on this one same way. Okay, del dot B is there. So what is del F? So let me go for the 3-dimensional one. What is del F in 3-dimensional? It is going to become like dou F by dou X plus dou into I vector, dou F by dou Y into J vector plus dou F by dou Z into K vector is going to be. This is nothing but del F. Now I'm going to operate again on that. So del dot del F, that means it's a dot product. This is a vector. Again, this is a vector. So I'm taking a dot product, that is going to become like dou square F by dou X square plus dou square F by dou Y square plus dou square F by dou Z square is going to come. So this is called actually Laplacian. So the another notation for this one is that they used to write as delta F. Okay, this is called delta F or del dot del F, or they can also write it as gradient square F. Okay, So these two notations usually they use it. So if you take any of the research papers, they simply write it as del square f, or they'll put it as del, okay, or they'll use these symbols only in order to denote this one. Okay, so you can remember that. So Laplacian, you can define this way. Now question number 2, can we define a similar way the Laplacian of a vector? Next question, can we define a Laplacian of a vector? We have defined Laplacian of a scalar function, scalar valued function we have defined. Okay, Laplacian of a scalar valued function is defined this way. Okay, so sorry, this is a mistake here. It's not BA, it should be F. Okay, that the first one, it should be F, dou square F by dou x square. This is the correct one. That is not correct one. Okay, dou square VI cut, that is not the correct one. Dou square F by dou x square. Okay, this is the correct one. This is the correct one. That is not correct. That VI should be F. Okay. Now Laplacian of a vector. How do we define the Laplacian of a vector? Again, the same thing. Del V you can define. Okay, del V equal to del square V equal to. Okay. So delta V equal to or del square V equal to you can define, which is going to become like del dot del V. Okay. What is del V? Del V is, we got to define what is del V now. So del V is going to become like, so this is going to become like summation I equal to 1 to n dou square Vi by dou xi square Ei. It's a vector. Okay, it's a vector. V is a function from r power n to r power n. So you got to define this way, the dou xi square. So this is called Laplacian of a vector. Okay. So these Laplacians are going to be useful for some of the problems, because that is going to define about once you are talking about the Hessian matrix and other things. So in that case, this delta is going to play the role. And also like whenever you are talking about the heat equation or Laplace equation or wave equation, so at that time we will see like what is this Laplacian operator is, how the Laplacian operator is coming, because second order derivative will be taking in order to describe some of the phenomena. So at that time this Laplacian is going to come to the picture. Okay. So next one is another important thing, which is called boundary condition. How are we going to solve the bound? How are we going to deal with boundary condition? That is next topic. Okay. So whenever a partial differential equation is given, for example, I have given something like ut plus ux x equal to 0. I have given this is some partial differential equation given. Okay. Or you take like some problem like ut minus ux equal to 0. Some problem is given to you. Okay. So for this problem, you got to define. So whenever I say a problem, what you need to define is that what is the domain of the problem you got to define. So the domain of the problem means you got to define the domain for x, domain for t, both you got to define. Okay. So here ut minus ux, I'm just defining minus infinity less than or equal to x less than or equal to x less than infinity, minus infinity less than x less than infinity, and t is positive. Okay, t is greater than 0. I am defining. Now, if I want to solve this problem, it is going to have infinite number of solutions. Okay. Suppose in this problem, suppose I impose some other condition called at the t equal to 0, u of x comma 0, I know. What is the value? I know. Okay, it is given. Suppose it is given. Some values are given. So in that case, okay, in that case, what I'm going to say is that this problem is called initial value problem. Same way, I can extend it for further. What you are going to have is that suppose you have a problem, okay, f of x comma du comma etc. dm power u equal to 0 is given. Apart from that, this is the domain is given. Okay, x belongs to some omega, it is given. Okay, x belongs to omega, it is given. Now, suppose in this x there is a t is involved. Okay, so let me put some t is also involved in that. So in this case, what I'm going to define is that what is the u at x comma t. This x is a vector. Okay, what is here t greater than 0? Let us say. Okay, so u of x comma t, I got to define at t equal to 0. So u of x comma 0, I got to define. Okay, or I can say simply it is not necessary that 0. I can simply put some time. Okay, t naught. Suppose u of x comma t naught. This is the initial time step, initial time I have. Okay, u of x comma t naught equal to some f of x I am defining. Okay, this is a vector. This is a vector. Okay, so in that case, what I am going to say is that this is going to be called as initial value problem. Means why it is called initial? Because the condition, the initial condition is known to you. Okay, initial condition at the initial time, it is known to you That is the reason it is called initial value problem. Okay, a partial differential equation in the form of, okay, so a partial differential equation with the condition that some initial condition is given, then it is called initial value problem, or simply I will write it as IVP. Okay, I will not say like initial value problem every time. I'll simply say IVP. Okay, so in that case, it is called initial value problem. For example, here you can see that ut minus x equal to minus infinity less than x less than infinity, t greater than 0, and then I can simply define u of x comma 0 equal to some pi of x, where minus infinity less than x less than infinity. Then this is called initial value problem. This is one initial value problem. Okay. Similarly, I can define other thing like utt plus uxx equal to 0 is given, and then I define u of x comma 0 equal to some pi of x. Okay, so this is minus infinity less than x less than infinity, and then t greater than 0, and this is minus infinity less than x less than infinity, and then I can define u dash of x comma 0 equal to some let's say like some psi of x minus infinity less than x less than infinity. This is also initial value problem. Okay, this is also kind of initial value problem. Okay, next one, once I say omega once I say omega, so the omega is like this. Okay, the omega, this is my omega. Okay, x belongs to omega, or this is a subset of r power n, you can take it. Now what you can do is that, suppose I have a problem like this, uxx plus uyy, it's not time dependent problem. Okay, so uxx plus uyy equal to 0 is done. So it's a spatially dependent problem. So in this case, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to define, this is where x belongs to omega. In this case, it is defined. Now what I'm going to define is that I'm going to define something on the boundary. So this is called the boundary. This boundary also I'm going to define. Okay, this is, I just called as dou omega. In this boundary, what I'm going to say is that what is the condition for that? Okay, what is the conditions on the boundary e of x comma y equal to some pi of x comma y I can define, where x belongs to dou omega. Then that means I'm just prescribing some conditions on the boundary of the domain. So in that case, it is called boundary value problem. This is called as BVP, boundary value problem. So if the conditions are, apart from the partial differential equation, if a condition is given with respect to the time and the initial condition, okay, then it is called initial value problem. So we treat it as a time mostly. Okay, as per the physics problem, they used to treat it as the initial value problem. But mathematics, it doesn't matter because it is another value which we are having and then we are defining. Okay, but and the boundary value problem, what we have to define, a boundary is given, a spatial variable is given. In that case, I'm just defining what is the boundary at that boundary condition. I'm giving a boundary condition. That is, it is called boundary value problem. Any questions on this one? What is the difference between initial value problem and boundary value problem? Any questions? Any questions? So the idea is simple. You are prescribing the conditions and the initial position, then it is called initial value problem. If you are prescribing a conditions on the boundary, then it is called boundary value problem. Okay, so the idea is very simple. Okay, so let us see the different types of boundary value problem. So there is a thing, three different kinds are there: Dirichlet, Neumann, and others are there, but we are going to talk about mostly this one, and Robin. Okay, so these are the mostly we will discuss. So let us see the Dirichlet boundary condition. So in Dirichlet boundary condition, let me explain with the rectangle. Okay, so let me explain with the rectangle. So I have a rectangle. Okay, this is a rectangle where I have a condition where this is my omega. Okay, so let us say like 0, 1 means this is going to become like 0, 0. This is 0, 1, 0. This is 1, 1. This is 0, 1. Okay, so this is there. Now what I have is that this is my omega. Okay, so that means what is my problem is going to be. So for example, I'm just explaining with the Laplace equation, uxx plus uyy equal to 0. Okay, so in this case, I have this is x belongs to omega. Okay, so x belongs to omega. Now what is my dou omega? What I'm going to define? I'm going to define something like this. Okay, so I'm going to define like this. So u of x comma y equal to pi of x comma y. I'm going to define if x belongs to dou omega. That means what I'm going to define is that. So let me explain that. So for example, u of, I'm just rewriting this equation. Okay, in this form, u of x comma 0 equal to, let us say, x. Okay, and u of x comma 1 equal to, let's say, x square, and u of 0 comma y equal to, let's say, y, and u of 1 comma y equal to, let us say, some 2y. That means I'm just, if I write this one, okay, so if I just say this one, like I just define, if I write this one, okay, in a pictorial representation, if I write, okay, in that case, what I can write is that this one I used to write this way. So this is x equal to 0, this is y equal to 0, right? So y equal to 0 means here x, and this is x equal to 1. So it is going to become like, no, here y equal to 0. So x belongs to, yeah, this one is x is going to be that. Okay, so because y equal to 0 and y equal to 1, so this is going to become like x square. And this way I can write as y, this one I can write as 2y. So if I write this one, what does it mean is that it is going to represent these three things. So here it is called Dirichlet boundary condition, means you know what is x comma y, exactly the function you know. What is the function? Exactly you know. It is x, it is x square, it is y, it is 2y. Means the condition is given, prescribed at every point. The condition is, the values of u is known to you. Okay, what you need to do is that actually we will see that in the next lectures and other things. So uxx plus uyy equal to 0 means what is our ultimate aim? Our ultimate aim is that you got to find what is your u of x comma y in the entire domain. What is u of x comma y for the entire domain? You got to find, because that is unknown. U is unknown. So you need to find what is u of x comma y for the entire region. You got to find, entire domain you got to find. Now in addition, there is a condition given to you. The condition is that at the boundary, okay, at this boundary I have given some condition, at this boundary I am giving some condition, and this boundary, this boundary. So all four boundaries I'm going to give some conditions. Now the question is that suppose you know the values of u of x comma y exactly. Okay, this is very important. Exactly you know. Exactly you know what is the value of u of x comma y and the dou omega, means the boundary of the domain. Exactly you know. Then in that case, that is called Dirichlet boundary condition. Okay, that word exact is very, very important. So the value is known to you. Okay, usually prescribed, although the other conditions are available. Okay, so the solution at the boundary of the domain are known to you. Okay, are the values of you are prescribed at each point of the boundary, means you know the values of that exactly, and that is called Dirichlet boundary condition. Okay, the values at the boundaries are exactly known to you. Inside you don't know, but outside, means on the boundary you know the values. So that is called Dirichlet boundary condition. And the other names for this one is called fixed boundary condition or essential boundary condition. Okay, so in that case, this is actually due to since the values are fixed here. Okay, these values are fixed here. All this location, the values of u's are fixed. That is the reason is called fixed boundary condition, and it is called essential boundary condition. It is due to that finite element theory literature. So due to in that literature, they used to call it as essential boundary condition, because you got to enforce the conditions in the finite element method in such a way that this is going to be satisfied. Okay, so this is called Dirichlet boundary condition. Now next one is called Neumann boundary condition. In Neumann boundary condition, what you know is that you don't know the exact thing. You don't know the exact values. It is not known to you. Okay, in the Neumann boundary condition, these are not known to you. Instead, what you are going to have is that suppose I have a domain. Okay, I have the same domain. Instead of this exact thing, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to calculate the normal derivative. The normal derivative. Okay, the normal derivative is this one. Okay, so this I'm going to denote as, let us say, dou u by dou n I denote. So what does that mean? It is nothing but n dot del u. This is called the normal derivative. Okay, you take the u is a function, scalar function. Take the gradient and take a dot product with its normal vector. Okay, that is called the normal derivative. This is called the normal derivative. Okay, so if this is known to you, this normal derivative is values are known to you. So I will describe what is dou u by dou n equal to, let us say, f1, dou u by dou n equal to f2, dou u by dou n equal to f3, dou u by dou n equal to f4. So all the places I'm going to denote a dou u by dou n. So here I denoted as u of x comma y I have denoted here. Here u of x comma y I have denoted. Similarly, I have here instead of that I'm going to denote dou u by dou n, dou u by dou n, dou u by dou n. Okay, so this is the two difference. Understand that. So this is Dirichlet. In Dirichlet, I define u is equal to f1, u is equal to f2, u is equal to f3, u is equal to f4. I am defining. Whereas in Neumann boundary condition, this is Neumann. So here I am defining dou e by dou n equal to f1, dou e by dou n equal to f2, dou e by dou n equal to f3, dou e by dou n equal to f4. So in this case, this is called Neumann boundary condition. Okay, this is called the Neumann boundary condition. Okay, so in the normal direction, I'm giving the boundary of the domain. I'm giving with respect to the normal derivative. So that is the reason this is called Neumann boundary condition. Okay, and this is also called as the first one is called boundary conditions of the first kind. Dirichlet boundary condition is called boundary conditions of the first kind. Neumann boundary condition is called the boundary conditions of the second kind, and this is also called as natural boundary condition as per the finite element literature, because once you do that finite element discretization, automatically this will come. Okay, this will come naturally as a boundary condition. It will be satisfied the finite element method. That is this called natural boundary condition. The next one is called Robin boundary condition. In Robin boundary condition, what you are going to describe is that you are going to take a combination of these two. Okay, you are going to take a combination of these two, linear combination of these two. You are going to take so alpha into dou e by dou n plus beta into u equal to f1, alpha into, so I can put alpha 1 beta 1, alpha 1 dou u by dou n plus beta 2, so this is alpha 2 beta 2 u equal to f2. Okay, and here I have alpha 3 dou u by dou n plus beta 2 u equal to f3. Similarly, I can define alpha 4 dou u by dou n plus beta 4 u equal to f4. Then this is called Robin boundary conditions. Means I'm just taking a linear combination of these two. So that is called Robin boundary condition. Okay. So if I just describe the Robin boundary conditions with alpha 1, suppose if I check alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, alpha 4 equal to 0, that means it automatically becomes a Dirichlet boundary condition. Similarly, if I take beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, beta 4 equal to 0, then automatically that will become a Neumann boundary condition. Okay, it's a linear combination of these two. Okay, u and its normal derivative, linear combination will be taking. So that this is called Robin boundary condition. Also, it is called convective boundary condition and impedance boundary condition, or boundary conditions of the second. Okay, so these are all coming because the convective terms will be talking about. So due to that, this is called. I will explain that in the KT equation how this is called convective boundary conditions, etc. Okay, so that is another thing. Okay, so while deriving the KT equation, we will check that. Okay, that is called convective boundary condition. Now, apart from that, some other conditions are there. For example, if I prescribe this one, okay, so here I prescribe dou e by dou n equal to f1, and here I prescribe u equal to f2, and here I prescribe dou e by dou n equal to f3, and here I prescribe u equal to f4. So in this case, this is called mixed boundary condition. Okay, if you define everywhere that condition, that is called Dirichlet boundary condition. If you define everywhere that normal derivative, that is called Neumann boundary condition. If you define this way, this is called Robin boundary condition. So this is called mixed boundary condition. Okay, this is a mixed boundary condition. Okay. Okay. Last one, I think I am not sure whether time is there. Okay, it is time already. Okay, so we'll discuss the next thing in the next class. Okay, well postness and solution method. Then I will today's exercise I will postpone because I thought to cover this solution method today, but I'm not able to cover it. So we'll discuss it. This assignment, so I mean the class exercise which I have given, I will make the time changes. Okay, so not necessary to solve now. Okay, so we'll cover this in the next class. Okay. Any questions regarding boundary conditions or classification of PDEs or normal gradient or divergence Laplacian operators? Any questions? Any questions? Do you understand what we are talking?
Sir, I have one question in quasi-linear, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, RHS should be 0 or it's some function, sir?
So in my lecture, the RHS can be RHS can be anything.
Okay, sir.
It is not necessary. Okay,
Function
only
of
that
X.
it can be function of x, it can be function of x comma y comma u. Only thing is the highest derivative I got to check whether it is going to be a function of x comma y comma u up to the previous derivative it should be there. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
It is a function of x comma t, sir?
It can be anything.
Okay, sir.
Whatever variable you
That-
have, it can be there on the right hand side. See here I have, right, in the 2D case and 3D case I have explained, right? So in 2D case, you can see that in quasi-linear, it can be in the right hand side, f of x, y, u, ux, uy can be there. Okay. For example, in the right hand side, I can simply put for that 2D variable, I can simply put x square plus y square plus u square plus ux cube plus uy cube. I can put it. Okay. In the left hand side, whatever I have given here, a cube, uxy, etc. I have given, right? So that is going to follow that. Right hand side, I can put this one. Okay. So this side, I have something like uxx, etc. is there. Okay. So which obeys that whatever I have given here. Right hand side can be this way, but it should not be like this one. Uxx. You should not have this one. Uxx square should not be here. Okay, it should not be here. So it should be a function of up to the previous derivative. Whatever be the highest derivative, up to the previous derivative, it can be on the right hand side. Here the highest derivative is 2. Okay, that second order PDE. Therefore, it can be having the other thing. Remaining things, the leftover, like up to the first order, it can be on the right hand side. It doesn't mean that it has to be the right hand side. Even if I write it in the left hand side also, it is making sense. Okay. So here I'm just making like a right hand side so that you can just put some other thing, but it doesn't matter. Okay. Because f is just a function, right? Either you put it in the left hand side or right hand side, it doesn't matter. Okay. The only thing you got to check is that what is the coefficient of the highest derivative only you got to check it. Whether they are functions of either x, y, u, ux, uy, then it is fine. Okay, if it is not having, unless otherwise it is having some function of uxx, it is fine. It is not going to make any problem. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
Yes, sir. I have a
Yeah.
request, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, yes, sir. May you please shift the Wednesday class to some other time? Sir, I have one class, sir. On
Sorry, you
Wednesday.
want to shift? Sorry,
Can you shift, sir, Wednesday class to some other time?
this class.
No, sir. Wednesday.
Wednesday I already
Wednesday.
shifted to 9 o'clock, right? 9 o'clock only we are having, right?
Yes, sir. I have a class, sir, at that time. So, sir,
Actually, that already I shifted. That was actually 12 o'clock, but I think our students, Tasna and Samiran, they are attending other courses in ISA Tirupati. That's the reason we shifted actually that one.
okay, sir.
Probably you can watch the video, no problem.
Okay, sir.
Because they don't have any other time slot. Already there's our MSc students time slots are blocked for the remaining time.
Okay, sir. No problem.
Okay, you can watch that video, no problem. I'll send that video every time.